I wanted to talk to you guys about the Fifth Agreement. This is a series of books by Don Manuel Ruiz, and his very first book that is one of the top sellers, and it's actually one of the books that opened up my eyes, and I was exposed to that book around 17 years ago. And it's a very small book, and it's the 4 agreements, and this is number 5 agreement. So the very first agreement is be impeccable with your word. Our words are like spells. That's why it's called spelling. So our words can be very empowering, and they also can be very hurtful. And they can hurt people tremendously where they actually believe what you're saying. So that's the number 1 thing, be impeccable with your word. Number 2 is don't take anything personal, right? Don't take anything personal because it's coming from someone else. It's not coming from you. They don't know your true heart. So don't take anything personal. The third one is don't make any assumptions. So don't assume someone's talking about you just because you can relate to it. So don't just make your own assumptions. So, and number 4 is always do your best. Always do your best. So if you do those things, they're common sense, but if you do that, then you have a better quality of life because you're really watching what you're doing. The 5th one is the 5th agreement goes along with everything, and it's question everything. You have to question everything. So instead of making an assumption, you actually ask a question and have a conversation. That's why we have that ability to speak. And what we become, what we say, we actually become. So we have to be very careful with our words. I believe that coming into this new era that we're in and transitioning right now, we're going to be much more aware of our words, and we are going to be very select on what words we use because we know the power of the word. Again, words, that's why they're called spelling, because you actually can create spells. It's very, very it's very powerful, the word, right? So, and again, you have to question everything because everybody takes their own experiences, and from their own experiences, they come up with their conclusions. The majority of the time, humanity, and this is obviously because we can look back at our history, and I can tell you from my family, there's not only good things that have come out of my family. I just choose to focus on those positive things. But if we really want to get down to it, obviously, you know, in order to get to where we're at today, a lot of people went through a lot of things, and they did a lot of things that were very, very negative. And now we understand how negative they were, but at that time, there were just traditions or things that they grew into, and they just decided not to break the cycle. They decided to do the same thing because that was taught to them. And I always bring my story and my life because if I could share a little bit of my experience, and you know where I'm coming from and where my heart is. So growing up, I grew up from the age of 5 until, I'm sorry, from the age of 7 until the age of 19. I grew up in Inglewood, and at that time in the 80s, it was the hood. And so, and I've shared these stories, and not all of them, but again, living in the hood, I experienced racism. I experienced racism not because of the color of my skin, or sometimes I did because I didn't look like your typical Hispanic. I had fair skin, my hair was, you know, whatever. I didn't look like your typical Hispanic, and then I didn't look like your African American. So it was kind of, and then my first language was Spanish, so I just didn't fit in. And so I was bullied a lot, and also again living in the hood in that time, we didn't have a lot of money, and so I felt the discrimination about, you know, with finances, and I thought my mom would, you know, tell me these stories because they came from money at one time, and I thought that maybe making money would give me that love and security, because the complaints were always, when you're in the ghetto, when you're in that mode, when you're there, you're in survival mode. And when I say survival, it's literally survival, because you don't know, you're living paycheck by paycheck, you're struggling to put food on the table. And I didn't really see it because my mom always cooks, so she made something out of nothing all the time, and that's how I learned to cook. Back in the days, I used to get upset that we couldn't go to McDonald's or we couldn't go to certain places, but now I am thankful that my mom cooked all this food and actually helped me be awake, because again, with the spells, with people casting spells and people trying to manipulate the mass quantities, they start tapping into their food source, right? So in the ghetto, we had kind of like two sides, right? We had one side that was the ones that cooked at home, and they either had rice or beans, or just beans and tortillas. And then we had the other group that weren't taught how to cook. They didn't know how to cook, so they had to go to, like, back then we had tacos from Del Taco, like 2 for 99 cents or whatever. So it was fast food instead of cooking some homemade food that at least it didn't have the chemicals, right? So now we have people that are clouded with their thinking ability because their food source has been contaminated. So living in the hood, we had, different groups, and it was easy to go into the gang members, it was easy to be part of a gang because you felt protected, because now you're not by yourself. But for some reason in my heart, I always ended up choosing what I used to think was the hard way. And it was the difficult route, because it was what not most people would take. So it was a harder road. So I didn't choose to be part of a clique. Part of a group, and so I would get bullied a lot. And I mean, I can tell you stories for days. One time they threw me into a dumpster in an alley. It was just all kinds of stuff. But luckily, I met people along the way that really, looked out for me, and they were from kind of like the same traditions. They were Mexican, coming from, first generation in the United States, so we kind of had the traditions of Mexico. And so, and again, Spanish was my first language, so, I didn't, even though I looked a certain way, I mean, I identified as being Mexican. And so again, luckily I had people that defended me, but I really ended up always going the opposite way. And again, my mother would always kind of be the one that would, if someone hits you on one side, you're going to give them the other cheek. And those are, teachings from Christ, that you can't fight violence with violence, right? But living in those conditions, living day to day with the constant struggle, whether you're going to be part of a gang or you're going to get beat up every day until you conform, or, what are you going to do? Are you going to ditch school so you don't get bullied? That's what I kind of chose to do. I ended up skipping school a lot because, and that was not the right thing to do, but I made choices along the way. And that's why growing up was a huge struggle, because I wasn't doing the wrong thing, but I wasn't doing the right thing either. So, again, when you're in those certain conditions of survival, you're not really thinking about, too much of, oh, why did I get here? Why did my family get here? You're not really thinking of the source, the root of the problem, right? And again, living in those conditions, the 1%, most of the 1%, the people that try to control you, that try to control the mass, they control you with the food source, right? They control you with words, with programming, the television, the movies they select for you to, either they're waking you up to the reality of what they're trying to do, or they're trying to just enforce it and just kind of program you and accept it you're going to be your life. So it's either one of the other. And again, it's easier for them to manipulate you and program you if you're polluted. And how do you get polluted? How do you get all this acid in your body? How do you get clouded? Well, you get clouded by your water source. All water has, regular water that comes from the tap has fluoride. And fluoride is also in your toothpaste. You have to find some that says no fluoride. Now, fluoride side are heavy metals that get stored in your brain, in your third eye, which prevents you from having the thinking ability, your intuition within yourself. What's another way that they can cloud you is with vaccines. Vaccines are heavy metals in large quantities, so now they're thinking your thinking ability is not at its max at its capacity, so they can manipulate you a little easier by showing you certain things and just starting to kind of put you in this little bubble and make you think that this is the only thing that's going on when there's so much going on. That's why you kind of, you have to look at the root, where you came from. How did your family get here? Why are we here? What's the battle that we're really battling? But within, not as a whole, but from the root of yourself, right? And until you realize all that struggle, and because again, not only do we get programmed from society, we get programmed from family, right? Again, I use myself as an example. I choose to focus on the positive, but there's been very much darkness in my family because they lost hope. They lost hope because they were fighting for what they believed in, which was good, which was Christ. But along the way, they felt hunger. Along the way, they felt loss. And when they felt so much loss and fear, and it was just not seeing any light, they despaired. And when you despair and you lose hope, you go into the darkness. So there was tons of darkness in my family. And especially and I think in most families, not just Hispanic families, but in most families, people always tell you to not tell your secrets, or not tell people what's going on in your home, because of what people might say, that your family's not what they thought it was. You paint this beautiful picture, but in reality, what happens behind closed doors? And again, and I share my my story because there was, again, a lot of darkness in my family. Two of my siblings died. The last sibling died when I was 6 years old, and that's when my life had completely changed. He was 11 years old at the time, and I was 6. So when my mother lost him, and my father, especially my mother, I mean, I can now just imagine what she felt to lose a child, and this was her second child. Her first child was 6 years old, and she had died. They were building a well in Mexico, and she fell in. That's the story. It was before I was born, and she was 6 years old. Now my brother was 11 years old, and we lived in Santa Monica, and he had an accident, and he was on his skateboard, and he got run over. And so he was 11. So when he passed away, my life changed tremendously. And abuse started at that time, and didn't stop until I was 13 years old. And it didn't stop until it didn't stop until I started fighting back. So what my mom had taught me didn't work. So now I had to fight because I was so hurt, and I realized that I couldn't get out of it because I shared certain things with my mom, which is supposed to be the person that's supposed to, your mom, your dad is supposed to protect you. And then they don't protect you because they're more scared of what people are going to say or what's going to happen. And again, I'll tell you, a little bit. My babysitter was a brother that was schizophrenic, and is, and he lives in a different country. He lives in Mexico now, and but he was schizophrenic, and he was 16 years older than I was, and he was really bad, like clinically, like everything you can think of, and he was my babysitter, and this man tried to kill my mom twice. He shot her in the leg, and my mom covered up for him and said it was a drive-by, and then he tried to stab her because he said that she was Richard Ramirez. He tried to stab her with a screwdriver. And again, this is my babysitter. So you can just imagine the craziness that I lived from the age of 6 to 13. And I say 13 because then I started to fight back, literally, like with knives and whatever I could find. And that's how I defended myself. But my mother defended him because he was sick. So he was the weaker one in the family. And so because of that, now I understand as a mother, but defending him and protecting him the way she did actually ended up hurting the entire family. So my mother had experiences, this was her child that was sick, and to her, this is how she saw him, and so she would always defend him. So she had tons of experiences, negative experiences with officers, with cops, because of course, the whole neighborhood would call the cops on this man. And so my mother would defend him from the officers. And you got to remember, the officers were just doing their job. They were being called. And so they show up to a house and they see this man that's literally insane. Because the majority of the time he wouldn't get arrested. He would end up going into a mental home for 30 days or whatever the time frame was at the time. And so my mom hated cops, like literally. And so she kind of, she hated cops because they mistreated her son, but they were, looking at it as, this is my job. He was uncontrollable, literally. He was out of his mind. So they had to use some force. And this is not, again, this is not justifying anything. I'm just trying to give you the different perspectives. So I saw cops as they were helping me because they were the only ones that were putting a stop to this man that was insane. And so there's the two perspectives. In the same household, I looked at officers as a light, someone that could help me. At least for those 30 days, I didn't have to worry about anything, or at least in my heart, that's what I felt. And my mother hated them. And so I grew up, at one point I wanted to be a police officer. I wanted to be in the military, and I didn't do that because I ended up getting pregnant. And this was intentional because at the time I was 17 years old, and it's really crazy to think, but I wanted to have a child so I could truly love someone, and that someone loving me back, because I didn't feel that love at that time, unfortunately, in my house, because again, my mother, I felt like she didn't protect me. I felt like my father didn't protect me. I didn't feel like anybody protected me. And so I knew that I had to do something. And so to me, officers were like, okay, maybe I can do that. Again, I didn't do it. I ended up doing hair, working as a waitress, taking on jobs to support my daughter. I then got married. I was married for 10 years. And at the end of my marriage, I ended up becoming a bail bonds. And I became a bail bonds for, it's now been 20 years. And being a bail bonds was pretty much the closest thing to an officer, right? But without being an officer. And actually, some people have like that kind of, obviously we're seeing it right now where they don't have a good thought process when it comes to an officer with blue lives, right? They always stereotype them and they think that they're all a certain way. So bail bonds were kind of like you had a little bit of power, right? To make a difference, but you were on the side that you would bail them out. You were actually getting them out of a situation. So you were kind of like everybody's best friend when they were in a bad situation. So I kind of had, the experience of, because again, when these people did not go to court, I had to go put them back in jail. So I carried a gun, and I did the booking process. I did all that. So in that process, I got to know a lot of people that were officers. And I myself, being in that industry for 20 years, I got to see also a lot of the negativity that officers see. So you got to remember, when you call the police, it's because you can't handle your situation anymore. You cannot handle it. So now you need outer help, right? So cops and bail bonds, right? These people, certain groups of people, even, emergency ER hospitals, they see the worst of the worst because you don't get there until you cannot handle it anymore. So you start getting a little jaded because you start associating everybody like, you know, for me, again, I can only speak for myself. For me, it was like I had to really look down at the people that were trying to get bailed out and look at every little thing, because now all I hear is lies. Because when you're in jail, the majority of the people that have been conditioned to be programmed to be in and out of jail, they tell you all the lies that they need to tell you to get out. It doesn't mean that they're going to comply with all these things. They just tell you what to, you know, they tell you what you want to hear in order to get out. And so you start judging people that way, and you start generalizing, right? And so again, that happens with everybody, with every group of people. Living in the hood, you're against officers because, you know, most of the time they're going to bust you for certain things. And being in the hood, you're in survival mode. So you're always doing things that are illegal most of the time. Trust me, I did my share of things, only I realized that that's not the life I wanted, right? I could get easy money, but easy money comes with a consequence. So I lived all that step by step. I didn't just, you know, one day come out of Inglewood and say, this is, you know, who I am now, and it's Nora today. I'm 48 years old, you know. It's taken many, many, many falls and many life experiences to get me to where I'm at today, and to make me understand that we cannot generalize anything. There's good and bad in everything, but we have to understand why we got here. Why does everybody generalize certain things? Why does everybody say this and everybody say that? And this group of people's like this. Stop generalizing. It's either good or bad. It's either the people of light that are trying to find the right way out, or it's the people that are trying to find the easy way out. People that are doing dark things. The devil's not one person, guys. The devil is people that do the devil's work. The people of God is the people that are trying to do the best they can, right? The beauty of it is, as humanity, we can pick and choose. We can say, you know what? That's it. Starting today, I'm living a new life. That's it. I decided I'm going to be a different person, just like that. And follow the steps. Not just talk the talk, but you got to follow the steps. And the easiest way to find your true purpose and find, you know, that light within you, it has to get back down to what you put in your body. Stop polluting yourself. How can you cleanse yourself so that you can make the right decisions for yourself? How can you uncloud yourself? Nutrition, number one. Alkaline your body. Get rid of the toxins. How can you alkaline your body quickly? You can do intermittent fasting. I have videos just on that. Alkaline food. Do your research, okay? Now, I have a story to tell you guys, and this, again, this goes to programming, to purpose, to all of that. If you guys have been following me for a while, I've talked about a particular brand, Easy Kale, which is crushed up kale, and it's made from an amazing friend of mine makes this, and he's a scientist, and he's an amazing man. He always tries to give back. On his free time, he has a nonprofit, and he feeds the homeless. He's an amazing, amazing man. And this man just literally got out the hospital. He eats very well. He knows about alkalining his body, and that's definitely probably the only reason why he survived today. So he allowed me to share the story with you. I just spoke to him yesterday, and just with text message, because he can't speak still. So he went into the hospital for an emergency tumor surgery, and when he went in, he is from the East Coast. He ended up getting the coronavirus. And for 30 days, they did not know if he was going to make it or not. And the doctors tell him today that it is definitely a miracle that he made it. And I truly believe that God allowed him to survive and to testify to this disease, this coronavirus that's very, very real. I think a lot of people, with everything that is being thrown out there, again, all this programming, they're trying to divert you from really what's really going on in the world. And the coronavirus is very, very, very real. And when your body is in a weak state like his was, you know, he had surgery, his immune system, everything is low, then you are able to get this disease and it can kill you. And luckily he survived it. Again, to tell the story, because I believe a lot of people don't think the coronavirus is real. With the IMBA, PMBA, the organization that I'm a part of with the natural bodybuilding, there's over 15,000 athletes that are part of this organization, and they're around the world, and they all keep a very alkaline body. So very happy to to report that not one person got infected with the virus. So your body's able to fight it if you have a alkaline body. But why do I bring that up? I bring that up, and I bring up that story because I believe right now, because we have the heat, and right now there's a different distraction, and the sun's helping us because we know that the sun kills the virus. That I believe that right now it's part of their programming. I believe the coronavirus will come again in the winter, and right now with all the chanting because of George Floyd, they're programming to continue to say, I cannot breathe, I cannot breathe. Remember, this virus is a respiratory virus. So if you program yourself to continue to say this, it has been scientifically proven that whatever you repeat, you will become. So what the teachings of Christ were correct, that if we speak it, if we believe it, if we feel it, we become it. So we must not say that we cannot breathe. We must say that we will breathe. We must say that we are breathing. We, again, have to get in control of our own self and stop letting everybody else control you. That's why it is critical to start with your food source. Start with a cleanse. I share it in my book, In Rescuing Myself. This is available in Amazon. I've shared many things on my YouTube. This is not to monetize absolutely anything, because everything that I do on YouTube and Instagram, it's because I'm just trying to help. This is my little grain of salt that I'm doing my part to try to help humanity. And again, you don't have to get the book. You can go ahead and go on my YouTube and see all the videos. I share recipes. And just cleanse your body so you can start knowing what you need to do for yourself. And until that happens, we're not going to rise as one. We're not going to rise as humanity, to discover all the powers that we have within us, because we're so powerful. And until we really start within ourselves and start really focusing on the words that come out of our mouth, and really take accountability for our actions, we're not gonna move forward. And I'll leave you with Noah, which is something that I live by, and I hope that you guys incorporate this in your daily life. Noah is N-O-A-H, N for nutrition. And when it comes to nutrition, I also talk about everything around you, who you surround yourself with. We absorb everything, the music we listen to. O for opportunity, take the opportunities in front of you, even if it's a quiet moment, to smell the roses, take opportunities, small things to huge things. Opportunities happen every single day. A for action and accountability, because we have to take action and accountability for everything that we do. And if we take action, then we're moving forward, but we got to look which way we're going. Are we going towards the light, or are we going towards the darkness? Don't put too much energy into the darkness. If you can't fix something, move on to something that you can fix, right? Be wise with your time. H is for history, because we have to know where we came from to know where we go. And something as small as asking your mother, your father, your relatives, your race, where you come from, how you got here, to the entire race of humanity. And until we do that, we're not going to know why we're here and where we're going. So on that, I send you guys a lot of love, and I hope this was informational. And please share, because until we're all in the same loving place, we won't be able to rise this vibration. And again, remember that the only thing that matters is love and